right. Hello, everyone. How are you? I hope you've been enjoying CMX Spark Mia. And if you're just tuning in, welcome. We've had some pretty incredible sessions. We have a lot more coming up. Let us know where you're tuning in from. So for those that are out there, find the chat box. Let us know where you're watching from. I'm here coming from Malaga, Spain, originally from the US, but here in Malaga, Spain. And my name is Seppi, rhymes with Peppy, and I'm your MC today here on the discussion stage. I'm the founder of a community called She Hit Refresh, and I'm also the co-host of CMX Connect Madrid alongside Valentina Ruffoni. Before we jump into today's session, I just want to let you guys know, if you have any questions, please drop them in the Q&A box that you'll see at the top of the chat box here, all right? And what I want to ask you guys to do is to help me give a very warm welcome to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Alfredo Morresi, who is the Senior Community Manager at Google and the founder of the Italian Community Managers. I'm going to pass the mic over to you, Alfredo, and we're really excited for this session.
Thank you. And can you hear me correctly? Just a check, a quick one.
Yeah, we can hear you. If you can get a little louder, that'd be great too.
Okay, great. So I will try to be louder. Hi everyone. I hope you had your lunch. We just discussed with CP, like in Spanish is almost in Italy. So let's try to entertain you with these leadership lessons from a team of community builders. Like basically I want to share what I've learned over time in leading teams of community builders. But if there is one single learning I want you to remember from this session, as a manager of a community team, your main task is to architect the long-term success of the community program you manage. If you think this is obvious, I would say, well, it means you are in a good shape already, the direction is right. But from the discussion I had over time with different other managers of a community teams, well, not all of them were aware of these important tasks they have, or not all of them were aware with the same appropriate level of focus. So in the next 20 minutes, I will try to provide my personal recipe on how to achieve this task. By the way, small disclaimer, I only have 20 minutes and 20 minutes really fly. So I will be very opinionated. I will leave a lot. I really love to listen to your experience as a community manager or even as a member of a community team, because I'm a curious person. For me, curiosity is the cornerstone. And so ask me questions, reach me after the contact, connect with me, and I will be really happy to talk with you and learn about your experience. So without further ado, let's move to the what part. Now that we sorted out to the move part, to the what part, architect the long-term success of your community program, let's move to the how part. How make this possible? 4 main points from my point of view. First one, build an indispensable community program. Design the community. Enable your team to perform at their best. And the last one, own your metrics. Let's explore these different options one by one. First one, build an indispensable community program. What does it mean, indispensable community program? Normal community program and an indispensable. Let's start with a question. What's the business value of your community? As a manager, your first and most important task for the long-term survival of the community program, of your team, and of yourself is to find the answer to this question, is to understand what are the benefits the community program brings back to the company. You can call it return of investment, but it would be a little bit reductive because you are not speaking only about money, but there are a lot of advantages that a community can bring to the company business. Why this question as a community manager? Well, because sooner or later, someone in the company wants to know why the company is investing money in the community, in you, in the team. what the company is getting out of this, why the company should keep investing money in the community program and not in one of the many other initiatives waiting for budget to start. And when this happens, you need to provide a very good and clear and immediate answer. Otherwise, even if today your founders blindly believes in the power of the community, even if today having a community is a cool thing to say in front of investors and clients, and even if you don't reach this lie or that, having clear in mind every single day a good reply for these questions make the difference between community program that survives and community program that thrives. Between you looking for position and you leading the way, showing where you want to go to the company thanks to the community program. In order to define the business value of your community, there are different frameworks, and one of the ones I suggest is called Spaces, is for CMX. So there are a lot of people to ask around if you are more curious. And by the way, I will leave the links to all the resources I mentioned in the presentation in the comments in this session, but also like there are attached to the speaker notes of this deck that I will release after the session. So once you find the business value of your community, there is still another additional important step to take before creating an indispensable community. Works only if also members find value, a personal advantage in participating to the community. So the overlap between these two values, the business value and the member values, makes a community an indispensable community. Is finding the sweet spot between the two, the sweet spot that brings value to the company and to the members at the same time. So your role as a team manager is to find and relentlessly focus your team on the magic overlap between what a company needs and what member wants. If you are good on this, I would say you have paid your bills. And going back to the initial statement, if the main what of being a manager of a community team is to architect the long-term success of the community program, this sentence here is the most important how. There is a book, The Indispensable Community, from Richard Millington, one of the speakers of today's event, and the book is entirely based on how to find and pursue this sweet spot. So highly recommended reading to add to your list. Second element for the long-term success of the community program, design the community. Let's start as usual with a question to better clarify what design the community means. What is a community? It's a simple question, especially because we are among community managers, builders, professional, community. And we all know there is a lot behind this question. We all know there are basic elements like people, for example, or identity, sense of belonging, emotion, purpose, all true, and this is all good theory. But allow me to say, as a team manager, you are not in charge of the theory. Your purpose, again, is to architect the long-term success for the specific community program you are responsible for. So a more appropriate question would be, what is your community? What makes your community specific, unique? What makes your community your community? How the people we mentioned before identify themselves with other people in your community and not in other communities? Do you remember when we spoke about the members' value? What's the reason, the value, the benefit the members will get out of your community and your community only? Why they join, stay, and contribute to your community and not? The process of design transforms the community, a generic and abstract concept, to your community, a very specific and well-defined entity. Again, resources. To design your community, there are different frameworks. The 7 P's of community is a very valid one. I use it in the past. Is basically identifying people, purpose, place, participation, policy, promotion, and performance as a core element that every community should have. There are also other frameworks too, like I liked and I used in the past the community canvas, the cargo community plan. And by the way, you can even figuring out your own way to design your community. What are the benefits of having a design for your community? I would say a lot. Overall, design the community is the baseline for a scientific approach to community management, to understand the different elements, how they interact with each other over time, and to study how to lead your community, very specific one, not to be led by a generic community program. Design the community makes an iterative approach possible. You make assumptions, you test them, you verify, you implement, and you repeat. Over time, this approach improves the quality of the community program and makes your community more resilient. Having this precise and punctual knowledge of what is your community today also makes possible to adapt to change, because we all know community is a living organism and it changes over time. It also makes success repeatable. Community management is an art. We love to say that, but there is also social science behind. And the more we know about this science and how to apply it to the specific building blocks of our community program, the more we are able to make success repeatable inside of the same community program or across community programs, and I would say even across our lifetime. Worst case scenario, you can avoid doing the same mistakes over and over because we can recognize in advance what will happen when the same process is applied to the same elements. And finally, a common community design allows a better and more structured exchange of experience among your team members. Once you have a common language in place you can use to talk about your community, once the building blocks are the same, once the objectives align, you support and exchange among team members, even if the specific community members they manage are different. Just to give you an example, imagine you have a single community program but run through different geographies. This is, for example, my particular case, and there are different people in this community program across different geographies. Well, you only change the people place referring to the 7P of community, but it's the same. So the community managers, the community builders can talk to each other, can support each other because they know very well what they are talking about, even if one small piece, small people is not a small piece, one piece of the community is different. And this is super useful. And by the way, if there are also other benefits, but to summarize, if an indispensable community allows your team and your community program to thrive, a community design allows your team to act like a pro, to be at professionals. So keep the point. Let's move on. The third how for architecting the long-term success of the community program is enable the team to perform at their best. Among the four, this is probably the most obvious how. I would say it should be the bare minimum knowledge for every person in the field of people management, yet never assume, and this is why for me it's important to mention this point. Briefly touch some of the particular ways this objective can be achieved in the context of a community. Let's start saying that the usual team management and leadership wisdom applies. It means that, luckily, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. There are different schools and approaches, every manager is different, every team member is different, and every company culture is different. So there isn't one single way to do it. My only personal recommendation is to not manage your team out of your guts, or in the way you have been managed if it was a positive experience, or doing the exact opposite if it was a negative experience. Study. Find your style, refine it, and repeat till the last of your days as a manager. There is a lot of knowledge you can find around a team of people. Be the shield and the compass of the team. This is an oversimplification, but it's my personal suggestion on a flavor approach your team. You have the honor as a team manager and the duty to shield them from the complexity of the outside world. I mean, outside of your team and also outside of your company if necessary. Both the shield and the The shield maintains the space, guarantees the freedom for the team to move in the direction pointed by the compass. And please note, I said show the direction as the compass does. I didn't say being the magnetic pole. So, as a team manager, you don't have the obligation to have all the answers to all the questions your team has. You could have some of them, or otherwise you can empower other people to find these answers. But in any case, as a team manager, you need to confirm what is the direction that you decided or someone else inside of your team decided. And this is also very important. Another point is about the growth of the team requires specialization. We know that community builder are one person band with several roles falling under the same hat of the same person. It could be okay-ish if you start building your team, adding one or two of these, let's call them jack of all trades role. But after these, specialized roles are the key for additional growth and to proper scale the impact of your community team. And this growth is contextual. It means that where to start, what are the new roles to hire really depends on your community and your specific context. You may need a data analyst, a role more focused on marketing, someone technical to manage the infrastructure, moderators, coordinators for different geographical areas. It's up to you to understand what you really need. And sometimes these specialized roles can emerge from within the team in more or less organic way, or sometimes you have to find a scout for them outside of the team. Find a balance between the bigger picture and the short-term goals. Community, we know, is a long-term game. And at this point, we know that the main task as a manager is to architect the long-term success of the community program. But you also need to keep the team aligned on the short achievements, on the short-time achievements, to recognize them, to pursue them, to celebrate when they happen. Because every long journey is made by many small things. To have this flexibility in your approach. Long-term vision, but small-term attention. Empower the team to find the right tools to organize itself. This is probably one of the hardest tasks in this list, because there isn't a standardized set of tools for community builders and for managing a team of community builders. And often finding these tools is a try-catch process, so could be painful. But remember, entropy grows over time in the universe and within your team, especially if you are growing it, if you are adding more people over time. So the right tool set is necessary to keep your team sustainable. Again, you are accountable, but not necessarily responsible for finding these set of tools. Show team members the direction and empower them to follow it. Again, be the compass and the shield. Personally, I use a tool called the community. Again, Richard behind here. And a community strategic plan is the logical process to allocate available resources to have the biggest impact toward your goal. With available resources, I mean people time, members attention, budget, etc., etc. And basically, it's a very good way to trace a straight line that connects the goals, the business value of your community we mentioned earlier, down to specific plan for the day-to-day work with measurement of results at the end of the process in order to improve over time and to iterate. Of course, you first need to have a design of your community in place, and then it's possible to create a community strategy on top of it. How affecting the long-term success of the community is own your metrics. While this is not a session on community metrics, metrics for me are a key element for the long-term success of the community. Why? Well, because metrics are the way we read the world, the way we assign a sense to reality, the way we quantify how sweet is the sweet of the indispensable community. And so, how do you want your community to be read, to be understood by other people? This is a very important question. Dictate the way they want to read your community. Own your metrics. Collaboration in deciding the metrics is okay, is even strongly suggested. Work with your stakeholders in order to find common metrics to understand, to read, to describe your community and the impact of your community, but do not delegate the decision on the metrics. And you know why? Because over the long term, a system behaves in the way it's measured. So if someone else decides how to measure your community over the long period, this person puts a very strong influence on how the community behaves. And at the end, what your team does to support that behavior. Do you really want that? Someone else deciding how your team should behave to support your community? I don't think so. But in my case, no. Let's quickly go through some of consideration for owning your metrics. Insights driven, not figures and dashboards. Getting insights is your final reason in deciding what to measure. Don't measure for the sake of having a lot of numbers or creating a cool dashboard and data visualizations. Measure because you want to know something, because you want a reply to a question, to a doubt, to an assumption you have. Always start from a question, then decide what's the piece of knowledge you need to understand to get the answer, and finally, how to measure it. So measurement is at the end of the process, not at the beginning. Different set of metrics for different stakeholders. There are insights for leadership, insights for the community members, insight to better understand your team, insights to see trends over time, and insights on your competitors. Apply a 360 degrees approach and avoid measuring only what's easy to measure or what you are pressured to measure. The most contagious metrics are emotions. For a data-driven person like me, it was an hard truth to accept. Regardless of my opinion, I learn in the hard way, numbers are only cool for data nerds like me. For the rest of the world, numbers are boring. So, and instead they love emotions and stories. Emotion and stories move from mouth to mouth, while numbers remains in your report. As a team manager, be accountable for building the storytelling of your community program. Identify and surface the heroes of your community and their stories, and the heroes of your team supporting the heroes of the community. They will pay the bill more than anything else. Only thanks to you, the team can take the leap of faith and focus on long-term metrics. If you leave the team alone figuring out insights and knowledge required for a broader and long-term understanding of what's happening, while you will focus or you will be interested only in the metrics your stakeholders are interested on, trust me, 99% of times the team will default to the shortest route to measure only what you care, only what the stakeholders care. But when you show you care about these broader and long-term insights, you care about that 360 degrees I mentioned before, when you show you compass points toward the direction, they will start to believe too. They will start figuring out the insights they need, how to get them, to get complex metrics over time. They will believe tomorrow, I would say, simply because you believe today. So we're at the end of the presentation. Once again, the most important role you have as a manager of a community team is to architect the long-term success of the community program. How to achieve it? Building an indispensable community program, designing your community, enabling your team to perform at their best, and owning your metrics. We reached the end. That's all my side. Sorry if I went very, very quick. And again, super eager to listen to your opinions and your experience especially.
Fabulous. Alfredo, thank you so much. We have some questions here. We have about 3 minutes. So I'm just going to so we can get to as many as we can. First question is people wanted to know if you'll be sharing the slides here in the chat.
Yes. Give me a second and I will do it.
Okay, so while you look for that, I will ask the first question that we have in the box here is from Ezra. Ezra is saying, hi, Alfredo. How and why did you decide to build communities? What steps did you take to achieve them? Thank you.
Well, I decided because I love to empower people. Like helping people, empower them, it's one of my life passion. And so building communities was a way to achieve this goal. One of the many ways to achieve this goal. And, I started small, like in my free time, back in time. founded the Linux user group in my city. Then it was like a community of developers because, you know, I have a background as a developer in the region. And luckily one day Google noticed this and, you know, they hired me to work with community programs in Italy. And then I scaled, reached Europe and it reached a global level. So I would say it was possible because it was one of my passion and I relentlessly focus on that passion of mine.
Fabulous. All right. Next question is from Joanna. Joanna asks, are you saying that community design and community strategy are two different things? Can you clarify your definition of both?
Okay, yes, of course, like we are speaking about words, so it's perfectly fine to have different understanding of the same words. For me, the community design is the description, the way you describe your community, and it more or less stands over time. Instead, the community strategy is the way you decide to work with your community, and can be adapted to specific situations. So, for example, before and after the pandemic, community design for my communities was community strategy because we had to face different situations. But again, this is very personal. You may have a different definition, and it's perfectly fine.
Fabulous. And last question here is from Ezra. She asks, did you have to take a technical interview to become a community manager at Google? If so, how was it?
I'm part of the developer relations team. So being technical, be able to speak to developers was kind of an important element, an important skill. So I didn't go through a totally technical interview, but there were some technical aspects in the questions I was asked to. So yeah.
Fabulous. All right, we are at time here. Just want everyone help me giving a wonderful round of applause, a virtual round of applause for Alfredo. You guys can drop your hand clapping emojis in the comments to show him. Alfredo, please read the comments. You have so much great feedback. Your fan club is here. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing all this amazing information with us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.